Aaron Murphy here with American Hunters and Anglers. As a former journalist, I used to look forward to this. It used to be the sound of important, accurate, fair, well-researched long-format TV news. But 60 Minutes, you shat the bed with your November 23rd profile of Montana and former Interior Secretary Ryan Zinke, a Republican who now represents Montana's 1st congressional district. Let's get the niceties out of the way. 60 Minutes, thanks for at least taking interest in covering public lands. It's a huge political issue. But this 60 Minutes segment gets a D-, lionizing Congressman Zinke as some sort of hero of public lands, framing Montana's Republican congressional delegation as if they're all champions of public lands. It's simply not true. And yes, of course we have the receipts. So in the name of better political journalism in a nation that desperately needs it, consider this response constructive criticism.
Another member of President Trump's cabinet is leaving the administration under a cloud of suspicion.
First of all, 60 Minutes, did you just forget that as Interior Secretary, Ryan Zinke was too corrupt for the Trump administration?
Zinke is resigning in the crosshairs of multiple investigations.
Yeah, Zinke resigned as Interior Secretary in 2018 amid scandal. In fact, in less than 2 years on the job, he racked up 18 federal investigations into his behavior. In 2022, the nonpartisan Inspector General found that Zinke, quote, did not comply with his duty of candor. As secretary, he abused his official position, then lied about it. The conclusion, Zinke, quote, knowingly provided incorrect, incomplete, and misleading answers to investigators. Read it for yourself. Well, you might say, this 60 Minutes story isn't about Zinke's past behavior. That doesn't matter. Bullshit.
Trump is in the house!
Ryan Zinke is another mega politician relying on the mainstream media to whitewash his record after resigning in shame as a cabinet official, one entrusted with overseeing America's public lands. It is journalistic malpractice to blow past that fact, especially now that Zinke is a sitting member of Congress. So congratulations, 60 Minutes. Your error of admission is exactly what Zinke wants and needs for his re-election campaign. How about the substance? As Interior Secretary, Zinke was no champion of public lands. In fact, as the New York Times points out, he oversaw the largest reduction of federal land protection in the nation's history. Another plain fact that 60 Minutes just skipped. Or how about this?
It's a red, white, and blue issue. It's not a Democrat or Republican issue.
Well, that is just political word salad. Today, only Republicans are proposing to sell off public lands and weakening protections for them. Show me a Democratic member of Congress or a Democratic administration that has waged war on public lands and wildlife like today's Republican Party has, and of course we will raise a stink with them too. For now, though, opposing the very idea of public lands belongs only to the GOP, and not just Senator Mike Lee of Utah. As a nonpartisan organization, American Hunters and Anglers looked at all publicly available platforms of Republican and Democratic parties in all 50 states. We found that 10 of them, all Republican, contain specific language supporting the sale, illegitimacy, or the transfer of federally managed public lands to individual states, including, you guessed it, the Montana GOP. Here's what that platform actually says. Quote, the Montana Republican Party supports relinquishing federally managed public lands to the states in order to provide for better management. If you pay attention to this issue, you'll often hear Republicans, and only Republicans, call for the transfer or relinquishment of federal lands to states, not to own, but to manage for now. They say doing so would result in better management. Journalists, that is a red herring, and it's time for you to start acting like it. No state has the vast financial resources needed to properly manage hundreds of millions of acres of, say, national forest or BLM land. Republicans damn well know this. They also know that the next logical step is to divest all that unaffordable land, to sell it the F off to the highest bidder. So where was Ryan Zinke, our hero of public lands, when his own party put that language in his platform just last year? Now, I will give Zinke credit for saying this.
Public land is not, to me, on a balance sheet.
But 60 Minutes, you missed this critical context.
This is America's balance sheet.
Treating public lands as America's balance sheet is the mantra of Trump's current Interior Secretary, Doug Burgum, who also doesn't give a shit about public lands. And what does Ryan Zinke think about Doug Burgum?
Well, first of all, great pick with Governor Burgum. I know him personally.
Has Zinke changed his mind? Well, 60 Minutes didn't even bother to ask. Missed opportunity. But perhaps the most egregious omission from 60 Minutes might just be about the provision by Senator Mike Lee in the U.S. Senate's first version of the so-called Big Beautiful Bill. It would have sold up to 3 million acres of national forest and BLM lands across the West, except for Montana.
Zinke was instrumental in getting the land sale proposal killed in the House. He then coordinated with his colleagues in the Senate, where Mike Lee had crafted a special carve-out exempting Montana. But that didn't win over the state's delegation. The measure was abandoned.
No. Mike Lee didn't just carve out an exemption for Montana in hopes it might win over Montana's delegation. He worked hand in hand with Montana's senior U.S. Senator, Steve Daines, to spare public lands in Montana from the auction block. As for everyone else, well, in June, Daines told E&E News that any public land sell-off would be, quote, narrow in scope. In other words, still a fucking sell-off. And as soon as it became clear that selling off public land was deeply unpopular, Daines, as he tends to do, licked his fingers, stuck them in the air, and reversed course, engaged in damage control, and blamed his flip-flop on, quote, some confusion. But if you watched 60 Minutes and didn't follow all of this political dumbassery, you might just think Steve Daines was doing the right thing all along. Again, not true. Oh, and one more thing. It looks like 60 Minutes interviewed Ryan Zinke here.
Behind us is the Yellowstone River, and below us, the Yellowstone dumps into the Missouri.
The Yellowstone River doesn't even run through Montana's 1st congressional district in western Montana. The river is entirely in Montana's 2nd congressional district in eastern Montana. So Ryan Zinke couldn't even bother to meet a major national news outlet in his own district. 60 Minutes, disgraced Interior Secretary Ryan Zinke, and damage control Steve Daines are dealing you from the bottom of the deck. Public lands are suffering for it, and you completely whiffed. Do better.